The night her brother vanished, the house was silent, too silent, no scream, no struggle, just nothing. One moment, Max was lying in bed beneath his rocket ship blanket, and the next, his room was empty. That was 1997. Now, 28 years later, his sister has returned, older, haunted, and still searching, and in the very place where Max disappeared, she found a wall that pulsed, shifted, breathed. What she discovered inside would unravel everything she believed about that night and about what was real. It was the summer of 1997 in the quiet town of Maple Hollow, just another warm evening when fireflies danced outside bedroom windows and children fell asleep to the sounds of crickets chirping beyond the trees. In a modest two-story home at the end of Willow Street, 10-year-old Max Whitaker was getting ready for bed. His older sister Emily had just turned 13. She was brushing her hair in the mirror when Max came into her room one last time, barefoot, smiling, holding his favorite flashlight like a toy sword. Night, Emmy, he said, tapping the doorway like it was some secret ritual. Night, dork. She laughed, tossing a pillow at him. It was the last time she would ever see her little brother. That night, everything seemed normal until it wasn't. At exactly 3:12 a.m., Emily stirred in her sleep. She remembered it vividly. A cold draft across her face, like someone had opened a door. Faint whispers, what? Impossible to understand. She sat up and listened. Nothing. The house was still, too still. She crept out of bed and checked on Max, just like she'd done 100 times before when storms scared him or he had bad dreams. But this time his room was empty. His rocket ship blanket was tossed aside, his window slightly ajar. A faint breeze moved the curtain, his flashlight was still on the floor, and Max was gone. Panic erupted in the house. Their mother screamed his name until her voice broke. Police arrived within the hour. They searched every inch of the home, every shed, every yard and streetlight-lit road nearby. Dogs sniffed for scent trails that ended at the sidewalk. Neighbors formed search parties. Flyers with Max's smiling face appeared on every pole and store window in town. But there was nothing, no fingerprints, no signs of forced entry, no evidence of anyone coming in or going out. It was like Max had simply vanished into the air. In the following days, theories swirled. Maybe he ran away. Maybe someone lured him. Maybe he sleepwalked and got lost. But none of it made sense. Max was a careful kid, a rule follower. He was scared of the dark and never went outside alone after sunset. None of the theories matched the boy Emily knew. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the case went cold. The Whitaker family was left shattered. Their mother withdrew from the world. Emily stopped talking in class. The house, once filled with laughter and cartoons, became heavy with silence, and the room where Max once slept remained untouched, frozen in time, a ghost of what used to be. But Emily never stopped wondering, never stopped listening, because in her heart, she knew something was wrong that night, something no police report could explain, something hiding just beyond the drywall, behind the silence, beneath the surface, waiting to be found. The days after Max's disappearance dragged on like a nightmare that refused to end. Emily, just 13 at the time, found herself trapped in a world that had turned gray overnight. Her mother was barely holding it together, crying quietly during the day, screaming into pillows at night. The house that had once been filled with birthday balloons, video games, and bedtime stories now echoed with silence like even the walls were grieving. The town of Maple Hollow came together at first. Vigils were held. Volunteers searched the woods. Candlelight flickered on street corners beneath posters of Max's freckled face. His picture was everywhere, on milk cartons, on the evening news, even once flashing across the national headlines, but nothing came of it, no clues, no body, just a child-shaped hole that no one knew how to fill. As weeks became months, the interest faded. The search parties shrank, the news vans left, the town went back to normal, or at least pretended to, but for Emily, nothing was ever normal again. She stopped going to school for a while. Her grades plummeted. At night she barely slept. Listening instead to the creaks and groans of the house, she became obsessed with the idea that Max was still out there, not dead, not lost, but hidden, taken. She'd stare at his bedroom wall, the one behind his bed, and remember the sound she'd heard the night he vanished, whispers like breath through cracks. Their mother, overwhelmed by grief and guilt, tried everything. She hired psychics, dowsers, paranormal investigators. Some claimed they felt something in the house, a presence, a void, but none of it led to answers. It only deepened the mystery and drained their savings. Eventually, things just, stopped. The house remained the same, but the life inside it began to rot. Emily watched her mother slip into depression, barely speaking some days. The birthdays passed without candles or cake. Max's room remained untouched for years, like a shrine. But Emily couldn't let it go, not completely. She kept notebooks filled with theories, sketches of the floor plan, possible abduction routes, even strange dreams she had, where Max called out from inside the walls, dreams that felt too vivid to ignore. When Emily turned 18, she left town, carrying with her the weight of a missing brother and the ache of unanswered questions. But no matter where she went, the silence followed. And no matter how far she tried to run, she always found herself haunted by that night, by the sound of nothingness, and by the image of a room that had once held someone she loved. She vowed that one day she would return. She didn't know when or why, only that something in that house had never let her go. It was late autumn when Emily returned. The air in Maple Hollow felt colder than she remembered, not just in temperature but in spirit. The leaves had fallen, the streets had grown quiet, and her childhood home sat untouched like a monument of sorrow. The house had been empty since her mother passed away 3 months earlier. After 28 long years of waiting, wondering, and aching, the property now belonged to Emily. Most would have sold it, torn it down, buried the memories beneath concrete and silence, but not her. She came back with a reason, not to live, not to forget, but to finally confront the house and whatever it had hidden for nearly 3 decades. The first step through the front door felt like crossing into a dream, familiar yet foreign. The floor still creaked in the same spots. The light switches clicked the same way. Max's drawing of a rocket ship, once proudly taped to the fridge, was still tucked in a kitchen drawer. Time had frozen here. But beneath the dust and peeling paint, something had changed. The first night back was uneventful. Emily unpacked only a suitcase. She didn't intend to stay long, but sleep as always eluded her, and that's when she heard it, soft, subtle, but unmistakable. A sound from behind the walls, a breath. She froze, holding hers. The house was supposed to be empty, yet there it was again, like someone slowly exhaling through a narrow space. Not a gust, not wind, a slow, deliberate breath. The next day, she examined the area. The sound had come from the hallway wall between Max's old room and the master bedroom. It didn't make sense. No vents, no pipes, just solid wall. She pressed her ear against it, nothing, but that night it happened again. This time with more taps, faint like fingers brushing against drywall. She started documenting everything, times, sounds, frequencies. Emily even bought audio equipment and placed it around the house. She wanted proof, not for others, but for herself. Because as the days passed, the events grew bolder. At exactly 2:59 a.m. on the 5th night, she awoke to a soft knock, 3 taps, from inside the wall next to her bed. She sat up, heart racing, waiting. Nothing followed. But in the stillness, she swore she heard a whisper, her name, barely audible, like breath dragged through teeth. She didn't run. She didn't cry. Instead, she whispered back, Max? No answer, just the hum of silence vibrating with potential. The next morning, she examined the wall again, measured it, studied it. Something was off. From the outside, the hallway wall was longer than it should have been, by at least a foot. And in Max's old room, that same wall was thick, unusually so. She pulled out the blueprints. They didn't match. According to the official layout, there should have been open space between two beams, but the wall was solid, or at least it looked solid. Over the next few nights, the sounds intensified. The breathing became rhythmic, like lungs working in their sleep, and the whispers came more frequently, always between 2 and 3 a.m., always her name, always from that wall. Emily began to change. She stopped eating, barely slept, not from fear but obsession. For the first time in years, she didn't feel helpless. She felt close, closer to Max than she'd ever felt since the night he vanished. The wall, she believed, was trying to speak, not to scare her, not to harm her, but to reveal something it had been holding all this time. One night, driven by instinct, she placed her palm flat against the drywall, and she felt it, warmth, a pulse, not just her imagination, a thump, then another, slow, like, heartbeat. The wall was alive, and it was waiting for her to listen. Emily's hands trembled as she held the blueprints under the dim glow of a single lamp. The lines, once so familiar, now felt like a map to a secret she'd nearly forgotten. According to these drawings, the hallway wall between her old bedroom and the master bedroom should have ended well before the adjoining closet. Yet here it was, solid, unbroken, a wall that shouldn't have existed. She crept into Max's former room that night, flashlight in hand. Dust motes danced like restless spirits in the beam's path. The floorboards groaned beneath every hesitant step. Her heart pounded not with fear, but with a fierce determination. She knelt at the base of the wall where the wallpaper bulged most distinctly, an odd ripple that seemed to move gently as if breathing beneath its floral pattern. Pressing her palm flat against the wallpaper, she felt a faint warmth, like breath exhaled too close. Beneath her fingers, the surface pulsed in slow, deliberate rhythms. Soft whispers curled through the plaster, half-heard syllables lost between walls and time. Emily, help. Find me. The voice was unmistakable, Max's voice as clear and distant as a memory. Summoning every ounce of courage, she produced a small utility knife and scored the wallpaper's seam. With trembling fingers, she peeled back the paper in long strips. Each tug released tiny clouds of dust, and decades of silence. Underneath, the drywall was intact. No cracks, no indication of a hidden space, yet the pulsing remained, stronger now, like a heartbeat clamoring to be heard. Emily switched to a hammer and chisel. The first tap echoed like a gunshot in the deadened room. She paused, breath caught in her throat, expecting the wall to fight back. It didn't. She struck again, once, twice, and a shower of plaster chips fell to the floor. A thin line of darkness appeared, a crack she'd created. Through it came a faint hiss of air, stale yet unmistakably alive. It smelled of earth, of damp wood, and something else, something old and aching. She widened the opening, chipping away layer after layer until the chisel broke through into a narrow crawl space. Emily peered inside. The beam of her flashlight revealed a sliver of a room, no more than a few feet wide, but long enough to stretch beyond her vision. Her breath caught as she saw shapes, mounds of decayed toys, a tangle of wires, and something unmistakable, Max's red toy car, half buried in dust. Her heart thundered. She knelt and reached in, fingertips brushing the toy's chipped paint. Beneath it lay a folded piece of paper. She pulled it free and unfolded it by flashlight. A crude drawing of two stick figures, one tall, one small, standing before a rectangle marked the wall. Scribbled beneath were his childish letters, "Don't trust it, he's here." Emily swallowed hard. "Who?" she whispered into the darkness. The only reply was the soft scrape of something shifting behind her, floorboards creaking under unseen weight. She turned, shining her light, but saw only the empty room behind her. When she looked back at the opening, the narrow chamber seemed to retreat, as if the wall were drawing itself closed. She forced herself to reach deeper, her fingers traced along a dusty shelf of objects. Max's lunchbox, an old baseball glove, a tattered comic book page she remembered reading to him. Each item carried a heartbeat of memory she thought long dead. But then her hand brushed something smooth and cold, a metal ring, set into the far wall. She grasped it and pulled. A panel swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a hollow space bigger than she ever imagined. Inside lay more of Max's things, his blanket frayed but intact, his favorite storybook pages yellowed, and scrawled messages on the chamber's walls. "I'm trapped. He won't let me go." And beneath those words, deep scratch marks gouged into the wood, some fresh enough to reveal pale, raw wood beneath the dust. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the panel creaked closed behind her. The flashlight flickered. Shadows converged at the edge of the opening, and through the gap, she thought she saw a shape move, slender, elongated, almost human, but wrong. She yanked the panel free and scrambled backward, clutching Max's blanket to her chest. Her pulse thundered in her ears as the chamber's latch clicked shut of its own accord, sealing shut the hidden room. She staggered back into the hallway, chest heaving, every nerve ablaze. In her hand she held the proof, Max's possessions, his plea for rescue, the undeniable evidence of his existence beyond this wall. But there was more. Something alive behind the panels close. A weight on the other side, pressing, waiting. And as Emily pressed her ear to the freshly opened hideaway, a whisper came again, so close she could feel the breath on her skin. "Emily, don't leave me." Emily didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor of Max's old room, back against the wall, gripping his worn blanket like it was a lifeline. The house groaned with age, but now she could tell the difference between wood shifting and something else moving, something that waited for nightfall, something that lived just behind the drywall. By morning, her body was sore and her mind foggy, but her mission had sharpened. She couldn't leave. Not now. Not with what she'd seen, what she'd felt. The hidden room wasn't just a forgotten crawl space. It was a prison, a place where time had stopped, and something or someone had been watching her the entire time. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and the long shadows stretched across the hallway, Emily prepared. She brought tools, lights, a camera. She reopened the hidden panel, its hinges moaning like an ancient warning. The crawl space greeted her like a mouth parted mid-scream, silent but full of threat. She crawled in deeper than before, determined to find the truth. The air was colder here, denser. She set up the light and scanned the interior, and that's when she saw it. In the far corner of the space, just past a pile of old bedding and faded sketches, something moved. Not fast, not loud, but deliberate, a shifting of mass in the darkness. Her light flicked toward it, catching the edge of a figure, tall, pale, skin like stretched wax, no eyes, no face, just a smooth surface where features should have been. Emily gasped, stumbling backward, scraping her hand on the splintered wall. The figure didn't follow, it simply turned its head, slowly toward her. And in the absolute silence that followed, a sound filled her ears, not from outside, but from within. He never left. He was taken, traded. Her vision blurred. Her skull buzzed. The figure stepped back into the wall, merging with it like smoke through fabric. Gone. Emily scrambled out, gasping for breath, shaking uncontrollably. Whatever that thing was, it had lived there, fed off that room, off Max, off her family's grief. And it was still there, watching, whispering. It hadn't just taken Max. It had become part of the house. The days that followed blurred together. Emily barely left the house. Every hour she wasn't sleeping, she was searching, digging through floorboards, opening vent covers, peeling back layers of her childhood home. The house had secrets, and now they were beginning to scream. In the attic, tucked inside a box marked Christmas, Emily found something strange, a cassette tape. No label, no dust. Almost like it had just been placed there. She popped it into an old player, static. Then a voice, Max's voice. "I don't know where I am. The wall eats time. Mommy, I'm scared." Emily dropped the player. Her hands trembled violently. Max had recorded something from inside the wall, and somehow this message had survived all these years. It was more than a clue. It was proof. He hadn't run away. He'd been taken into something unnatural, something that had lived in the walls long before they ever moved in. Piecing everything together, Emily uncovered local legends buried in Maple Hollow's forgotten archives, stories of children disappearing every few decades, families who moved out and never explained why, houses condemned for structural breathing. One survivor, a woman institutionalized in 1963, claimed her brother had been swallowed by the plaster. No one believed her. Until now. Emily mapped every incident, every timeline. It all pointed to one thing. This house and others like it had something inside, a presence, a hunger, and Max had become part of it, kept alive not in body, but in echo, in memory, in walls that breathed. But Emily wasn't giving up, not now. She believed Max could still be saved or released, or at least freed from this house's endless hunger. She had one last plan. A way to open the wall completely, to go inside, and face whatever had stolen her brother 28 years ago. Emily stood in the middle of the hallway, barefoot on cold wood, her hand pressed flat against the wall that had haunted her for 28 years. The air around her felt heavier now, like the house was aware of her presence, like it was watching her again. Every breath she took was echoed by something behind the plaster. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. The wall was breathing again, and this time it was waiting. She had prepared for this moment. The blueprints were laid out on the floor behind her. Every discrepancy had been marked in red ink, every false beam, every added thickness, every impossible turn in the structure. None of it should have existed, but it did. She now believed the house wasn't built wrong. It had been altered intentionally. It was built around something, a void, a trap, a chamber designed not to be lived in, but to hold something or someone. Max had been taken by it, or maybe given. She didn't fully understand it yet, but she would. She gathered her tools, a crowbar, a lantern, a body cam strapped to her chest, and around her neck she wore Max's toy rocket ship, found among his belongings in the hidden room. A talisman now, something to remind her that this wasn't about uncovering a ghost story. It was about him, about bringing her brother home. She began to dismantle the wall. Panel by panel, the drywall fell away. Dust clouds swirled in shafts of moonlight, nails screeched as they were pried loose from wood that hadn't seen the light in nearly 3 decades. Beneath the surface, old insulation hung like decayed skin. She pulled it aside and revealed it. The second wall, smooth, seamless, breathing. It pulsed with a slow rhythm just as before, but now it was faster, more awake, like it knew she was coming. Emily didn't hesitate. She pressed her hand against the warm surface, and this time she spoke. "I'm not afraid of you. I'm here for Max." The wall responded with a low vibration like a hum, a frequency too deep to hear but easy to feel. It crawled up her bones. Her teeth ached. But she stayed, and then the wall opened. Not like a door. Not with hinges. It peeled open like skin parting along an invisible seam. Beyond it was darkness, a void where sound was swallowed. She stepped inside. The space was unlike anything she had imagined. It wasn't just a crawl space. It wasn't even a room. It was a chamber, spherical in shape, walls made not of wood or plaster, but something soft, organic, breathing. There were no lights, and yet she could see everything, as if the chamber glowed faintly from within. Along the curved surface, scratch marks ran in every direction, some deep, some fresh. In the center was a small bed, a blanket, and Max. He looked no older than the day he disappeared. Emily dropped to her knees. Her heart collapsed inside her chest. Tears blurred her vision. Max lay curled on his side, motionless, breathing shallowly. He was real, not a ghost, not a vision, but real. Alive, somehow. "Max," she whispered, reaching out. "It's me, Emily. I'm here now. I'm taking you home." His eyes fluttered open, hollow, clouded by decades of sleep or captivity. He blinked, tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. "Don't let it in." and behind her the chamber shifted, something rose from the shadows. Tall, slender, that same faceless figure, skin stretched tight over bone, its limbs too long, its presence older than language. Emily stood between it and Max, shaking. "You can't have him," she said, "not anymore." The entity tilted its head, no eyes, no mouth, but she felt its rage. It didn't speak in words, but in emotion. It projected its need, a hunger for memory, for presence, for attachment. It fed on those left behind, on grief, on longing. That's why it had kept Max all these years, not alive, not dead, but remembered. As long as Emily searched for him, it had power. Her hope had nourished it. Emily realized the truth. The wall didn't kill, it preserved. It turned grief into a loop, feeding the house, feeding the thing behind it, so she did the only thing it couldn't bear. She let go. "Max," she whispered, turning to him, "I love you, but you're free now, even if I have to leave without you." The figure shuddered. The room pulsed violently. Emily stood tall. Tears streamed down her face. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the toy rocket ship, the one Max had drawn 1,000 times. She placed it in his hands, then turned to the wall, now beginning to close again. She ran toward it, and at the last second, as the opening narrowed, she threw herself through, landing hard on the hallway floor, scraping her arms and knees. The wall behind her snapped shut, seamless, breathless, silent. Emily lay there for minutes, hours maybe. The house returned to stillness, but something had changed. The whispering stopped, the breathing stopped, and for the first time since 1997, the house felt empty. She sat up, her hands trembled, her chest ached, but she knew she had broken the loop. Max was gone, freed. She didn't know if his body had aged. She didn't know if he had ever truly existed inside the physical space of that wall. But his spirit, his presence had been held there, and now it no longer was. 2 weeks later, Emily put the house up for sale. She left the town of Maple Hollow and never looked back, but not before sealing up the room completely. Brick, steel, insulation. She made sure no child could ever be taken again. Before locking the door one final time, she stood in the hallway, hand resting on the fresh plaster. She whispered just once, "Goodbye, Max." And from somewhere behind that cold surface, she imagined, just maybe, she heard it, "Thank you." Emily would go on to write her story. The town dismissed it as fiction, urban legend. Some called her delusional, others called her brave. But she didn't care, because the house was quiet now, the wall no longer breathed, and for the first time in nearly 30 years, Emily could finally breathe too. If this story sent chills down your spine, share it with someone who loves unsolved mysteries. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because more terrifying true stories are coming. And remember, some walls aren't meant to be knocked on.